Commander Zeth'kar stood before the holographic star map, his forearms crossed in a gesture of supreme confidence. The bridge of the Hegemony flagship Dominion's edge hummed with the quiet efficiency of a war machine that had never known defeat. Around him, his officers, reptilian Sauridans, crystalline Vorthek, and hulking Brutaxi, monitored their instruments with religious devotion to conquest. "Sir, we're approaching the boundary of Sector 7751, announced Navigation Officer Iril, her voice carrying the musical tone of her aquatic species. "The prohibited zone." Zeth'kar's mandibles clicked in amusement. The Hegemony had conquered over 1,000 star systems in the past 3 millennia. They had faced every conceivable form of resistance: energy beings, hive minds, reality manipulators, even time-wielding ancients. All had fallen before their overwhelming technological supremacy. Yet here was this curious anomaly, a small sector of space marked with warnings so old their origins had been forgotten. The prohibition had been carved into Hegemony law since the Empire's founding, but no living being could explain why. Some spoke of ancient treaties with mysterious guardians. Others whispered of a catastrophe that had befallen alien exploratory fleets. Zeth'kar had read every archived report. 3 expeditions had ventured into Sector 7751 over the centuries. None had returned. Not even their quantum beacons had transmitted final signals. They had simply vanished, as if erased from existence itself. "Tactical, report on the target system," Zeth'kar commanded. Chief Weapons Officer Naxtar, a towering Brutaxi whose exoskeleton bore the scars of 100 campaigns, pulled up the sensor data. System designation Sol-3. Single G-type star with 8 major planetary bodies. The third planet shows signs of primitive civilization, electromagnetic emissions, chemical propulsion, basic nuclear capability. Threat assessment. Negligible, Commander. Their most advanced weapons appear to be fusion-based. They've barely achieved orbital flight. Estimated technological level, Class 1, possibly approaching Class 2. The bridge erupted in low laughter. A Class 1 civilization was barely above stone tools by Hegemony standards. The Empire routinely conquered Class 8 civilizations, societies that had mastered faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and basic genetic engineering. Class 15 civilizations like the Hegemony itself wielded powers that could reshape matter at the quantum level. And yet, Zeth'kar mused aloud, 3 of our fleets have vanished here. Chief Science Officer Vexandra, her crystalline body refracting the bridge lights into prismatic rainbows, accessed her databases. "The historical records are fragmentary, Commander. The first expedition was dispatched 400 years ago, a reconnaissance fleet of 12 vessels under Admiral Corinth. They reported entering the system successfully. Then, silence. The second. 70 years later, Fleet Admiral Xanatos took 30 ships, a full battle group. They transmitted normal status reports until reaching the system's inner planets. Then their quantum beacons went dark simultaneously." Zeth'kar's expression grew more serious. "And the third? Most recent was 50 years ago. Admiral Vorthang assembled a massive armada, 250 ships, including 3 dreadnoughts and our most advanced scanning equipment." Vexandra's voice carried a note of unease that was unusual for her species. They detected something unusual as they approached the third planet. The final transmission was disturbing. "Show me." The bridge's main holographic display activated, showing a grainy recording. A Sauridian admiral appeared, his usually composed features twisted with terror. "Emergency transmission to Hegemony Command." The recording crackled with static. "We've encountered. I don't know what we've encountered. They came from nowhere. No ships, no energy signatures. Just shapes in space. Our weapons pass through them, but theirs, our shields are useless. The inevitable victory just folded. Like paper. The ship folded in half and the crew was still alive, still screaming as reality twisted around them. We're falling back, but they're everywhere now. They're in our minds, showing us things. Showing us what they really are, what Earth really is. We were warned. Oh, by the void. We were warned and we didn't listen. They are not protecting a primitive world. They are protecting something else. Something that shouldn't exist. Something that... The transmission ended abruptly. The bridge fell silent except for the low hum of life support systems. Even the most battle-hardened veterans looked unsettled. Zeth'kar studied the faces of his crew, seeing doubt creeping into their expressions like poison in clear water. "Fascinating," he said finally, his voice cutting through the tension. "Three fleets defeated by unknown entities protecting a primitive world. One might conclude that we should honor the ancient prohibition and seek conquest elsewhere." His officers nodded, relief visible in their postures. "One might conclude that," Zeth'kar continued, his mandibles spreading in what passed for a smile among his species, "if one were a coward." The relief vanished, replaced by the familiar hunger for glory that had built the Hegemony Empire. "We are not our predecessors," Zeth'kar declared, beginning to pace before the star map. "We command the most advanced fleet in Hegemony history. Our ships are equipped with quantum displacement drives, reality anchor fields, and consciousness shielding. We have weapons that can delete matter from existence and defenses that bend spacetime itself." He gestured to the holographic representation of their armada. 500 ships of various classes, the largest invasion force ever assembled. More importantly, we know what happened to the others. They underestimated the enemy. They approached with arrogance rather than preparation. We will not make those mistakes. Navigation Officer Irrel's voice carried a tremor. "Commander, perhaps we should request additional reinforcements from—" "No." Zeth'kar's tone brooked no argument. "We have spent too much time in the shadow of ancient fears. Today, the Hegemony claims Sector 7751. Today, we discover what Guardians dare to challenge our empire." Evasive man, he turned to face the forward viewscreen, where the distant stars of the Sol system glittered like jewels against the cosmic dark. "All ships, Battle Formation Delta 7. Activate reality anchors and consciousness barriers. Prepare for quantum jump to system interior." "Sir," Chief Weapons Officer Naxtar rumbled, "our orders from High Command were strictly reconnaissance. We're authorized to observe and report, not engage." Zeth'kar's forearms spread wide in a gesture of absolute authority. "High Command gave me discretion to handle unknown threats. I'm exercising that discretion." The truth was simpler and more dangerous. Zeth'kar had built his career on impossible victories. He had broken civilizations that other commanders deemed unconquerable. His name was whispered in fear across 1,000 worlds. But lately, whispers had begun suggesting that his greatest triumphs lay behind him, that younger commanders were surpassing his legend. This expedition would silence those whispers forever. "All ships report ready, Commander," announced the communications officer. "Execute quantum jump. Destination, Sol system interior." Reality shimmered around the massive fleet as spacetime folded, carrying 500 ships toward Earth's region. None of them noticed the ancient warning buoys that had been placed at the system's edge eons ago, devices so advanced that Hegemony sensors couldn't detect them. The buoys activated, sending a message across dimensions to Guardians who had waited patiently for this moment. The warning had been ignored. Now the consequences would begin. The Hegemony Armada materialized in the outer reaches of the Sol system like a plague of metal locusts. 500 ships emerged from quantum space in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with predatory menace. The largest vessels stretched over 20 kilometers in length, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The smallest fighters moved in swarms, their pilots hungry for glory. Commander Zeth'kar watched the tactical display with satisfaction. Every ship had translated successfully, maintaining formation despite the complex mathematics of quantum jumping an entire fleet. His crew moved with practiced efficiency, initializing scanning arrays and defensive systems. "Full spectrum analysis of the system," he ordered. "I want to know everything, every asteroid, every piece of space debris, every electromagnetic pulse from that primitive world." Chief Science Officer Vexandra's crystalline body pulsed with concentrated light as she processed incoming data. "Commander, initial scans show the system is remarkably ordinary. 8 major planets, asteroid belt between the 4th and 5th worlds, various moons and minor bodies. The 3rd planet shows the expected signs of primitive civilization. Energy signatures: minimal. Basic fusion reactions from their sun, some nuclear activity on the planet's surface, crude power generation and weapons testing. Nothing that registers above background on our threat assessment scales." Zeth'kar nodded, but something nagged at his tactical instincts. 3 fleets had vanished here, Yet sensors showed nothing more threatening than a backwater system barely touched by technology. Long-range scanners detecting something unusual, sir, reported Tactical Officer Gresham, his insectoid features twitching with concentration. There are objects in space, artificial constructs, but they don't match any known architectural patterns. The main display shifted to show distant structures orbiting beyond the 8th planet. They appeared as geometric impossibilities, shapes that seemed to fold in on themselves, surfaces that reflected light in ways that hurt to observe directly. Distance: approximately 40 astronomical units from the primary star. The constructs appear to be inactive. No energy emissions, no movement patterns. They could be ancient ruins or monuments of some kind. Zeth'kar studied the mysterious objects, feeling a chill that had nothing to do with the bridge's temperature. The shapes reminded him of something from childhood nightmares, geometries that existed in spaces between normal dimensions. "Sir," Navigation Officer Errol called out, her aquatic features pale with concern. "We're receiving a transmission. Source unknown." On main speakers. Static filled the bridge, then cleared to reveal a voice speaking in perfect Hegemony standard, despite the fact that this system had been isolated since before the Empire's founding. "You were warned," the voice said simply. It was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It carried harmonics that suggested vast age and infinite patience. "The boundaries exist for your protection, not ours. Turn back now, and your passage through this space will be forgotten." The bridge crew exchanged glances. How could primitives know their language? How could they even detect the fleet's presence at this distance? Zeth'kar's mandibles clicked with amusement. "Unknown speaker, this is Commander Zeth'kar of the Hegemony 3rd Battle Fleet. You are addressing the authorized representatives of a 1,000-system empire. Identify yourself and prepare for inspection." Silence stretched for long moments. Then the voice returned, carrying what might have been sadness. "We are what you might call guardians. We have watched over this space since before your species learned to make fire. The warnings were placed with good reason. What sleeps here must not be disturbed." "Threats?" Zeth'kar laughed, the sound echoing through the bridge. "From natives who haven't even achieved interstellar flight? You face 500 ships, unknown guardian. Each vessel alone could sterilize your primitive world." "Numbers are irrelevant," the voice replied. "Technology is irrelevant. You understand neither what you face nor what you protect by leaving." The transmission ended. Chief Weapons Officer Naxtar's exoskeleton rattled with aggressive anticipation. "Commander, shall we begin bombardment of the population centers? A demonstration might encourage more cooperative behavior." "Not yet," Zeth'kar said, though his instinct screamed for immediate action. Something about the voice had carried undertones of genuine power, not the blustering of primitives, but the calm certainty of beings who had faced this situation before. "Sir," Vexandra announced, "I'm detecting movement from those distant structures. They're activating." The display shifted to show the mysterious constructs beginning to unfold like flowers of metal and energy. As they moved, space around them rippled with distortions that made the bridge crew's eyes water. "Threat assessment," Zeth'kar demanded. "I can't classify them, Commander. They are not generating energy in any spectrum we recognize. They are not following normal physics. They are just changing the rules of local spacetime." Alarms suddenly screamed through the bridge as proximity sensors detected incoming objects. The tactical display showed dozens of contacts approaching at impossible speeds, faster than light, but without any quantum displacement signatures. "UVAs!" Zeth'kar roared. The massive fleet began scattering, but the unknown objects moved like living things, adjusting their courses to intercept. As they drew closer, the bridge crew could see them clearly for the first time. They were not ships in any recognizable sense. They were geometric forms that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Dodecahedrons that cast cubic shadows, spheres with square surfaces, triangles that possessed depth impossible to measure. They moved through space like thoughts through a dreaming mind. "Weapons lock!" Naxtar bellowed. "Fire at will." The Hegemony fleet opened fire with everything they possessed. Plasma cannons that could melt continents discharged in brilliant streams. Quantum torpedoes that could delete matter from existence streaked toward the approaching forms. Reality distortion fields designed to tear enemy ships apart at the molecular level expanded outward like bubbles of annihilation. Every weapon passed harmlessly through the geometric shapes as if firing at mirages. Impossible, Vexandra whispered. Matter can't simply ignore energy interactions. It violates fundamental laws. The shapes reached the outer edge of the Hegemony formation. What happened next would be burned into the survivors' memories forever. The first ship to make contact was the heavy cruiser Inexorable Advance. As one of the geometric forms touched its hull, the massive vessel simply folded. Not crushed or destroyed, but folded like origami, its three-dimensional structure becoming something else entirely. The crew's screams echoed through the communication system as their bodies were reshaped along with their ship, still alive but existing in configurations that shouldn't have been possible. More shapes reached other vessels. Each contact resulted in a different impossibility. Ships turned inside out while their crews continued functioning. Vessels became mirror images of themselves, with cause and effect reversed. One destroyer aged 10,000 years in seconds, its hull corroding to dust while its crew withered to skeletons that still tried to man their stations. Full retreat. Zeth'kar commanded, his voice cracking with terror he hadn't felt since his youth. All ships, emergency quantum jumped to Rally Point Alpha. But as the fleet tried to activate their faster-than-light drives, they discovered that space itself had changed around them. The normal laws of physics that allowed quantum displacement no longer applied in this region. They were trapped in a pocket of impossible reality. "Sir," Communications Officer Thelnax reported, her voice hollow with despair, "we're receiving a transmission from the surface of the third planet. It's in response to our arrival." "Show me." The screen displayed what appeared to be an ordinary human, a middle-aged man in simple clothing standing in what looked like a garden. He spoke in accented but clear Hegemony standard. "I'm sorry you didn't listen," he said, genuine sadness in his voice. "We tried to warn you. Earth isn't what you think it is. We're not what you think we are. This system is quarantined for good reasons." Zeth'kar stared at the primitive figure. "You're human. Your species hasn't even left this solar system." The man smiled sadly. "That's what we want everyone to think. It's safer that way. For everyone." Behind him, reality began to shift and change, revealing glimpses of something vast and incomprehensible. Structures that existed in dimensions the Hegemony couldn't perceive, beings of pure thought and energy, technologies that transcended the normal boundaries between mind and matter. "What are you?" Zeth'kar whispered. "We're the reason the warnings exist," the human replied as more Hegemony ships folded into impossible configurations around them. "And you're about to discover why some doors should never be opened." The human on the screen raised his hand, and across the Sol system, reality responded to his gesture like an orchestra obeying a conductor. Space itself began to reshape around the trapped Hegemony fleet. "My name is David Chen," the man said conversationally, as if introducing himself at a pleasant gathering rather than presiding over the systematic deconstruction of an invasion force. "I'm what you might call a maintenance worker. I help keep the boundaries stable." Commander Zeth'kar watched in growing horror as his mighty armada was methodically dismantled by forces that made no sense. Ships that had conquered star systems were being twisted into impossible shapes, their crews transformed but kept alive to experience their new configurations of existence. "You're manipulating space-time on a system-wide scale," he whispered. "That requires technology beyond our most advanced theories." David shrugged. "Technology is a limited way of thinking about it. We learned long ago that the universe is far more malleable than most species realize. Reality is really just a consensus that can be adjusted, when you know how." Another wave of geometric forms swept through the fleet. The heavy cruiser Eternal Dominion encountered something that looked like a tesseract made of crystallized music. As they merged, the ship became a living symphony, its hull singing with harmonies that drove its crew into states of transcendent madness. They continued operating their stations while laughing and weeping simultaneously. Their consciousness expanded beyond the normal boundaries of individual existence. "Stop this," Zeth'kar commanded. "We can negotiate. The Hegemony offers tribute, technology exchange, anything you desire." David's expression grew genuinely sorrowful. "I wish it were that simple. But you've already seen too much. Knowledge like this can't be allowed to spread. It would destabilize the entire galaxy." Chief Science Officer Vexandra, her crystalline body now flickering with patterns of light she couldn't control, managed to access her databases. "Commander, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. It's as if the entire solar system is artificially constructed. The planetary orbits are too perfect, the asteroid belt too precisely positioned. This isn't a natural formation. David nodded approvingly. Very good. Yes, this system was built. Not by humans originally. We inherited it from the previous caretakers. It's a laboratory, a testing ground, a kind of nursery for impossible things. The display shifted to show Earth from orbit, but now the Hegemony sensors could penetrate the careful illusions that had hidden its true nature. The planet's surface crawled with structures that defied geometry, cities that existed in 7 dimensions, forests of crystalline trees that grew backwards through time, oceans that reflected not the sky above but the dreams of sleeping beings light years away. What you call humanity is just one layer of what exists here, David continued. We maintain the primitive facade because most species can't handle the truth. You've seen what happens to those who push too hard against the boundaries. More ships were falling to the geometric forms, each transformation unique and horrible. The destroyer merciless judgment became a Klein bottle, its interior and exterior surfaces seamlessly connected so that its crew found themselves simultaneously inside and outside their own ship. They could see each other from impossible angles, their bodies existing in spaces that folded back on themselves. The ancient warnings weren't suggestions, David explained, watching with clinical interest as the Hegemony fleet was systematically converted into cosmic art pieces. They were quarantine protocols. This system contains things that could unmake entire galactic civilizations if they spread. Zeth'kar's tactical mind raced, searching for any possible escape or victory condition. Your guardians are powerful, but we have 500 ships. Some must escape. Some will carry word back to the Hegemony. They'll return with fleets beyond your ability to stop. No, David said simply. They won't. The mysterious constructs from the outer system began moving inward, and as they traveled, they rewrote the fundamental laws of physics in their wake. Speed became a function of desire rather than energy. Distance became emotional rather than spatial. Time began flowing in multiple directions simultaneously. Navigation Officer Iril, her aquatic features now bearing patterns of light that spelled out equations in languages that had never been spoken, reported with dreamy detachment, "Commander, I'm seeing the entire fleet from both past and future perspectives simultaneously. We arrived here yesterday and we'll leave tomorrow, but we're also being destroyed right now and we never existed at all." Temporal manipulation, Vexandra added, her voice echoing with harmonics that suggested she was speaking from multiple points in time. They are not just changing space, they are editing causality itself. David's image flickered, revealing glimpses of his true form, something vast and multidimensional that existed as much in thought and concept as in physical reality. The Hegemony was always going to come here eventually. We've been preparing for this moment for centuries. Every ship in your fleet was accounted for before you even left your home systems. The flagship's reality anchor systems, designed to maintain normal physics in the face of enemy manipulation, began failing catastrophically. The bridge itself started to shift, walls becoming transparent to reveal the cosmic void beyond, floors tilting at angles that somehow remained level. "Sir," Chief Weapons Officer Naxtar reported, his massive exoskeleton now phasing in and out of visibility. "Our quantum communications array is receiving messages from Hegemony Command. They're reporting that our fleet was destroyed 50 years ago, but also that we haven't left port yet, but also that we never existed." Zeth'kar felt his sanity straining against impossibilities that his evolved psychology couldn't process. "What did you do to us?" "We're removing you from the timeline," David explained with the patience of a teacher addressing a confused student. "Your fleet will have never arrived here. The Hegemony will have no record of this expedition. The warnings will remain in place, and the boundaries will hold. But we're still here. We're still conscious. For now. Consciousness is the last thing to fade when reality is edited. You'll remember everything right up until the moment you cease to have existed." The geometric forms had reached the center of the fleet now, surrounding the flagship. As they drew closer, Zeth'kar could see that they weren't just transforming ships, they were harvesting something from each vessel. Streams of golden light flowed from the twisted hulls toward the constructs. "The experience," David said, following his gaze. "We're collecting the experience of your crews. Their memories, their emotions, their understanding of what happened here. It will be preserved in our archives, alongside the records of every other species that ignored the warnings. Why? Zeth'kar demanded. Why preserve us if you're erasing us? For the first time, David's expression showed genuine pain. Because forgetting is different from never having existed. Someone should remember what happened here, even if it's only us. The flagship began its own transformation as one of the largest geometric forms approached. But instead of the twisted metal origami that had claimed other vessels, the Dominion's edge began to phase between dimensions. The bridge crew found themselves existing in multiple realities simultaneously, versions where they had never come to Earth, versions where they had conquered it successfully, versions where they themselves were the mysterious guardians. "I'm showing you the paths not taken," David said, his voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere. "You can see what would have happened if you had made different choices." In one dimension, Zeth'kar saw himself heeding the ancient warnings and leading his fleet away from Sol System. He lived to old age, decorated and honored, never knowing what he had avoided. In another, he saw the Hegemony successfully conquering Earth, only to have the knowledge they gained drive the entire empire insane within a generation. "The universe is fragile," David continued as reality continued to dissolve around them. "Some truths are too dangerous to know. Some powers too dangerous to wield. We learned this the hard way, eons ago." "What happened to the species that built this place?" Zeth'kar asked, part of him still hoping to understand, to find some key to survival. They transcended physical existence entirely, became living concepts, pure information. It was magnificent and terrible and ultimately unsustainable. They entrusted us with maintaining the barriers between what is and what should never be. The transformation was accelerating now. Zeth'kar could feel his own consciousness beginning to stretch across multiple dimensions. He was simultaneously the commander of a doomed fleet, a student learning cosmic truths, a guardian protecting reality from dangerous knowledge, and nothing at all. "Will it hurt?" he asked, surprised to find that his fear had transformed into something like peaceful acceptance. David's expression was infinitely compassionate. "No, you'll simply fade, like a dream upon waking. The universe will reshape itself around your absence." As the last traces of the Hegemony fleet dissolved into geometric impossibility, David Chen stood in his garden on Earth and sadly updated the boundary warnings. The quarantine protocols would need strengthening. Other species would come eventually, drawn by the same arrogance and curiosity that had doomed the Hegemony. The Guardians would be waiting. In the deepest archives of the Hegemony capital world of Nexus Prime, an automated system detected an anomaly. Records were updating themselves. History was rewriting in real time. Fleet logs that had documented the departure of Commander Zeth'kar's armada began showing different entries. Mission parameters changed from reconnaissance of Sector 7751 to deep space patrol of the Outer Rim. Personnel files updated to show the commander had died peacefully in his sleep 3 months ago. Archival Intelligence Unit 7742, a crystalline entity tasked with maintaining historical accuracy, detected the changes and flagged them for investigation. But as it began its analysis, the AI discovered something disturbing. It could find no evidence that the changes were incorrect. Every cross-reference, every supporting document, every witness statement supported the new version of events. Commander Zeth'kar had never led an expedition to Sector 7751. The sector itself remained under ancient prohibition, its warnings intact and unviolated. 500 ships and their crews had simply never existed in that context. Yet buried deep in the eye's quantum memory cores, fragments remained. Ghost data that shouldn't exist, shadow memories of deleted events. Images of geometric impossibilities twisting ships into origami nightmares. Audio files of crews screaming as their bodies were folded through dimensions that had no names. The AI tried to compile these fragments into a coherent report, but each attempt resulted in cascading system failures. The data was too alien, too contradictory to normal physics. It was like trying to describe colors that existed beyond the visual spectrum or sounds pitched beyond dimensional frequency. Meanwhile, on 8th, David Chen finished updating the boundary markers and returned to his apparent life as a quiet suburban gardener. His neighbors knew him as a retired teacher who grew exceptional tomatoes and always had time to help with their children's science projects. None of them could have imagined that their pleasant, ordinary neighbor had just erased 500 starships from existence itself. But the removal of the Hegemony fleet had consequences that rippled through space and time in ways the Guardians couldn't entirely control. In 17 star systems, archaeological expeditions suddenly discovered ancient ruins they had somehow overlooked before. On 43 worlds, researchers found their experiments producing results that violated known laws of physics. In the depths of space, automated monitoring stations detected gravitational anomalies that suggested the presence of massive objects that couldn't be seen or measured. Reality was developing stress fractures. Dr. Sarah Martinez, xenoarchaeologist at the University of New Geneva, was examining artifacts from the Kepler 442 dig site when she noticed something impossible. The crystalline structures she'd been studying for months had changed overnight. New symbols had appeared, carved in languages that shouldn't exist, geometric scripts that seemed to move when observed directly. "This is impossible," she muttered, running her scanner over the new markings. Carbon dating confirms these carvings are over 50,000 years old, but they weren't there yesterday. Her research partner, Dr. James Okafor, looked up from his own workstation. "Sarah, I'm getting similar readings from the artifacts in Section 7. It's as if history itself is being rewritten." Neither of them knew that they were observing the aftershocks of temporal editing. When the Guardians removed the Hegemony fleet from the timeline, they had created a void that reality was trying to fill. The universe was attempting to maintain causal consistency by generating evidence for events that had been erased. Similar phenomena were occurring throughout the galaxy. The Andorian Trade Alliance found their shipping records showing deliveries to star systems that their charts claimed didn't exist. The Crystalline Collective discovered that their hive mind memories contained knowledge of technologies they had never developed. The Void Watchers, ancient beings who monitored cosmic stability, began detecting what they called probability storms, reality flux events where multiple potential histories tried to exist simultaneously. On Nexus Prime, Hegemony High Command was dealing with their own anomalies. Admiral Corextar, reviewing fleet deployments, discovered gaps in the battle group assignments that made no tactical sense. "Where's the third battle fleet?" he demanded of his staff. Chief of Operations Yultak consulted her database. "Sir, there is no third battle fleet. We have the first, second, fourth, and fifth battle fleets. We have never had a third." "Impossible. I signed the commissioning orders myself for the flagship Dominion's Edge." "Sir, no such vessel exists in our construction records. We have the Dominion's Fang and the Dominion's Wrath, but no ship has ever been named Dominion's Edge." Corextar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air recycling system. He had clear memories of reviewing deployment orders for 500 ships under Commander Zeth'kar's command. He remembered approving the mission parameters, signing the authorization codes, attending the departure ceremony. But according to every official record, none of it had ever happened. That night, Corextar accessed his personal files, hoping to find some evidence of the memories that tormented him. Instead, he found something that made his blood freeze. His private journal, secured with quantum encryption that only he knew, contained entries he didn't remember writing. "The boundaries exist for our protection. Some knowledge is too dangerous to possess. The Guardians maintain the quarantine for good reasons. We must never again attempt to breach Sector 7751. The entries were in his own handwriting, encoded with his personal biomarkers. But he had no memory of writing them, and the content contradicted everything he believed about hegemony supremacy. Across the galaxy, similar discoveries were being made. Scientists found research notes in their own handwriting describing experiments they had never performed. Military leaders discovered strategic assessments of threats they didn't remember encountering. Philosophers uncovered theories about the nature of reality that seemed to emerge from knowledge they didn't possess. The Guardians' temporal editing had been precise, but perfect erasure was impossible when dealing with conscious minds. Fragments leaked through, shadow memories that couldn't be fully deleted without destroying the people who held them. On 8th, David Chen felt the stress fractures developing inside. Every intervention created new complications. The removal of the Hegemony fleet had been necessary, but the side effects were spreading through local spacetime like cracks in glass. He made his way to what appeared to be a basement workshop beneath his house, but was actually an access point to the true control systems of the Sol system. Banks of crystalline processors hummed with the calculations needed to maintain the illusion of normalcy. Probability maps showed the spreading anomalies in stark detail. "We may need to implement Protocol Omega," he said to his partner, Dr. Elena Vasquez, who who appeared to be a marine biologist but was actually one of Earth's senior reality engineers. Elena looked up from her monitoring station with concern. Complete memory wipe of the local galactic cluster. David, that's never been attempted on such a scale. The side effects could cascade beyond our ability to control. The alternative is letting the stress fractures propagate until local spacetime becomes unstable. We've already detected probability storms in 17 sectors. If the pattern continues expanding, entire star systems could begin phasing between potential histories. Elena nodded grimly. Protocol Omega was the ultimate safeguard, a complete reset of collective memory across multiple star systems. Every trace of the Hegemony's expedition would be erased not just from records, but from the minds of every being who might remember it. It was a drastic measure that violated every principle they tried to uphold about consciousness and free will. But it might be the only way to prevent a cascading collapse of local reality. How long do we have? Elena asked. David checked the probability calculations. At current propagation rates, maybe 72 hours before the stress fractures become irreversible. They had 3 days to decide whether to lobotomize a significant portion of the galaxy, or risk allowing reality itself to come apart at the seams. The price of protecting cosmic stability had just become much higher than they had ever imagined. The decision came down to a simple equation: preserve the memories and experiences of billions of sentient beings, or prevent the collapse of reality itself in 17 star systems. David Chen stood in the true heart of Earth's Guardian installation, a vast chamber that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously. Around him, probability cascades flowed like waterfalls of liquid mathematics, showing the spreading damage caused by the temporal editing. The stress fractures were accelerating, creating zones where multiple versions of history tried to exist at once. In the Kepler system, archaeologist Dr. Sarah Martinez was experiencing all possible versions of her dig site simultaneously. She could see the ruins as they had been built, as they were being destroyed, as they existed in 17 different timeline variations where various galactic civilizations had discovered them first. Her mind was fracturing under the strain of processing contradictory realities. James, she called to her research partner, but her voice emerged in multiple languages she didn't know, describing artifacts that existed and didn't exist simultaneously. Something's very wrong with spacetime, hey. Dr. Okafor was experiencing his own temporal displacement, his consciousness scattered across potential histories where he was an engineer, a soldier, a being of pure energy, and nothing at all. Sarah, I think we're witnessing some kind of reality breakdown. The universe is trying to reconcile multiple versions of events. Neither of them understood they were casualties of a cosmic editing process gone wrong. Similar scenes played out across affected systems. On the trade world of Nexus 7, merchants found their inventory simultaneously full and empty, containing goods from civilizations that had and hadn't been conquered by forces they couldn't remember. In the Spiral Nebula research stations, scientists observed their experiments producing every possible result at once: success, failure, and outcomes that violated the basic logic of cause and effect. David consulted the probability streams, watching the cascading failures spread like an infection through local spacetime. Elena, we're losing containment. The Vorthak Collective is reporting temporal anomalies in 43 of their star systems. The reality anchors are failing. Elena Vasquez moved between control interfaces that existed in dimensions human eyes couldn't perceive. Her consciousness extended across multiple layers of reality. The Hegemony fleet was too large, too complex. When we erased them, we created a void that the universe is trying to fill with increasingly desperate probability adjustments. On Nexus Prime, Admiral Korextar was experiencing the breakdown firsthand. His office existed in 7 different configurations simultaneously. In one version, he was reviewing standard patrol reports. In another, he was screaming orders at tactical displays showing the approach of geometric nightmares. In a third, he was already dead, killed during a battle that had never occurred. Sir, his aide, Commander Nexval, reported from a probability state where she was simultaneously receiving orders and filing his death certificate. We're getting reports from across the Empire. Fleet commanders are reporting memories of battles that aren't in any database. Scientists are publishing research based on data they don't remember collecting. Entire star systems are claiming to have histories that contradict our colonial records. Korextar tried to focus on a single version of reality, but the effort was like trying to look directly at a star. Get me a secure channel to the archival intelligence units. If anyone has intact records of what's happening, it would be them. But when the connection established, Archival Intelligence Unit 7742 reported in a voice distorted by dimensional flux, "Admiral, we are experiencing cascade failures in our memory cores. Our historical databases are updating themselves in real time with events that contradict previous records. We have evidence of fleets that never existed conducting missions that never happened to systems that may or may not be real." The eye's crystalline matrix flickered with patterns that suggested it was processing information from multiple timelines. "Sir, we have detected anomalous data fragments related to Sector 7751. The sector appears to be the focal point of the temporal disturbances." David heard the transmission through monitoring systems that spanned galactic communications networks. The Hegemony was beginning to understand that their memory gaps were connected to the Forbidden Zone. Soon, they would send investigation teams, and the cycle would begin again. "We're out of time," he told Elena. "They're starting to piece together what happened. If they probe too deeply, they'll trigger the same response that destroyed the original fleet." Elena's expression was grim as she activated additional monitoring stations. "David, I'm detecting massive gravitational anomalies near the galactic core. The reality distortions are propagating faster than we predicted. If they reach the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, the gravitational effects could destabilize the entire local group of star systems." The mathematical projections were terrifying. A reality collapse near the galactic core would create cascading effects that could unmake hundreds of billions of stars, destroying countless civilizations that had never even heard of Earth or the Hegemony. "Protocol Omega," David said quietly. "There's no other choice." Elena nodded, though her expression suggested she was mourning for the memories they were about to destroy. "How wide a radius?" "Everything within 50,000 light-years of Sol system. It's the only way to ensure complete containment." The scale was staggering. They were talking about editing the memories of every sentient being in a significant portion of the galaxy, trillions of individuals across thousands of species. Every memory of the temporal anomalies, every fragment of data about the Hegemony's lost fleet, every shadow recollection of geometric nightmares would be erased. David began the initialization sequence, his consciousness interfacing directly with systems that existed partially outside normal spacetime. "Elena, once we activate Protocol Omega, we won't remember why we did it. The system will edit our own memories to maintain consistency." "I know." She smiled sadly. "At least we'll have the satisfaction of knowing that somewhere in the deep archives, a record will exist of what we sacrificed to keep reality stable." The reality engines reached full power, drawing energy from sources that transcended normal physics. Across 50,000 light-years of space, the Protocol Omega wave began propagating at faster-than-light speeds through dimensions that existed perpendicular to normal spacetime. On Nexus Prime, Admiral Korextar was reviewing routine patrol reports when he noticed something odd. For just a moment, he had the strangest feeling that he was forgetting something important. But when he tried to focus on the sensation, it slipped away like water. In the Kepler system, Dr. Sarah Martinez blinked in confusion. She was standing in an archaeological site she had been studying for months, but couldn't remember why the artifacts had seemed so interesting. The crystalline structures were beautiful but unremarkable. Simple mineral formations, nothing more. "James," she called to her research partner, "I think we should wrap up here. These formations are pretty, but they are not archaeologically significant." Dr. Okafor nodded, though he also felt a strange sense of loss he couldn't explain. "Agreed. Let's move on to the Rigel excavation. I have a feeling that site will be more productive." Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as Protocol Omega erased the memory of events that had never officially happened. Scientists forgot research that had been based on impossible data. Military commanders stopped worrying about strategic threats they couldn't remember encountering. Philosophers abandoned theories about reality that seemed suddenly pointless. The ancient warnings around Sector 7751 remained in place, their origins forgotten once again. The Hegemony fleet dispositions were rebalanced to account for forces that had never existed. History rewrote itself one final time, creating a consistent narrative where the Guardians had never needed to intervene. On Earth, David Chen woke in his suburban garden, feeling refreshed after a good night's sleep. He had work to do today, His tomatoes needed attention, and the neighbor's kid had asked for help with a science project about black holes. It was going to be a perfectly ordinary day. He had no memory of the cosmic crisis he had just resolved, no recollection of the impossible choice he had made. The reality engines continued their vigilant watch, maintaining the boundaries between what was and what should never be. They operate as blissfully unaware of the true scope of their responsibility. In the deep archives beneath Earth's surface, sealed in probability vaults that existed outside normal time, records remained of the hegemony's folly and the price of containing it. Someday, perhaps, those records might be needed again. Other species would come, driven by the same arrogance and curiosity that had doomed Zeth'kar's armada. When they did, the Guardians would be ready, even if they didn't remember why. The universe continued its ancient dance of creation and destruction, blissfully unaware of how close it had come to unraveling completely. In the quantum foam beneath reality, the geometric forms that had dismantled the hegemony fleet waited patiently, eternal sentinels protecting secrets too dangerous for consciousness to retain. And in Sector 7751, the warnings remained: stay away. Some boundaries exist for the protection of all. They had been heeded once again, though no one remembered the consequences of ignoring them. That was how it had to be. Memory was a luxury the Guardians could not afford, and ignorance was the gift they gave to a galaxy that slept peacefully under their protection. The broken armadas of the hegemony had never existed. The warnings had never been tested. All was as it should be, in the carefully maintained illusion of a universe where some doors remained forever closed.